Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's audio discussion where we take a look at the recent political developments and armed conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is in the context of the March 23 movement rebellion, M23, whose latest offensive has heightened the political instability and the risk profile of the DRC. So with me is my colleague, Dr. Ramu, who is a senior analyst at APEC Assistance. So Ramu, probably in a flash, you could give us maybe some brief background of this as we roll over.
Thanks a lot, Sitati. The M23 rebels launched their latest offensive on January 26th, to be exact, and they seized the capital of the North Kivu province, that is Goma. And this was a turning point, which basically meant that it cut off key supply routes and also helped escalate the hostilities between the rebels and the Congolese government forces. Since then, the conflict has intensified with over 900 people killed and 2,900 injured. Just yesterday, that is on February 5th, M23 took Nyabibwe, which is a key mining town in South Kivu, and which is about 70 kilometers from the headquarters of South Kivu, that is Bukavu. And this capture kind of violated the ceasefire that they had declared on February 3rd, which again raises fresh concerns about the true strategic intentions of the rebel group. Beyond the battlefield, the conflict has regional dimensions as well. Uganda recently deployed somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 additional troops to eastern DRC, officially to fight the Islamic State-linked Allied Democratic Forces, the ADF. However, suspicions remain that Kampala may be supporting M23. At the diplomatic level, the East African Community, that is the EAC, and the Southern African Development Community, the SADC, will hold a joint summit in Tanzania tomorrow and the day after, that is February 7th and 8th, to discuss this crisis and come up with a resolution, if at all it's possible. Meanwhile, in Kinshasa, anti-M23 and anti-foreign sentiment is rising, with violent protests targeting the embassies of the United States, Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, and even France. Sitati, let's talk about why this conflict has persisted for so long and what that means for the region as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, look, resolving the crisis in relation to the conflict that is with the M23, rebels, it's a little bit. There are so many factors which are put together. And to understand this conflict, you have to go back to the events that happened over 30 years ago. That is the genocide in Rwanda, which then evolved into the first Congo War, I believe in the, around 95 or 96 there, which eventually led to the oust of Mobutu Sese Seko, who was the president. And then the second Congo War, which began around 1990, was it 1999 or almost 2000? I can't recall that clearly, but around that period of time. So it's a conflict which has evolved from, ethnic-driven interests to mineral or mining-driven interests at this point. And of course, Rwanda is kind of implicated in all of this. And there's weighty evidence linking it to the financing of the March 23, rebel group. However, in terms of expectations, a further advancement of these rebels to Bukavu, which is, the capital of South Kivu province, and even possibly to Kinshasa, cannot really be ruled out. Recently, or rather yesterday, they captured, as you've put it, Nyabibwe town, which initially their post indicated that they were not going to capture it. But the capture of Bukavu and the capture of and the march towards Kinshasa will have not just short-term political consequences, but even in the long term. And it's important at this point to emphasize that former presidents like Mobutu Sese Seko and Laurent Kabila, their ouster or their ejection from power or their removal from power, which led to regime changes, began from the eastern side, the conflicts in the eastern side of the country. So if the march to Kinshasa therefore goes on, one thing that we are almost certain to witness is probably the fall of the President Felix Tshisekedi administration. Now, we expect ceasefire negotiations to intensify, but this does not necessarily mean that the agreements will be observed by both sides or the parties that are involved in this conflict. The conflict, as much as it's likely to be concentrated in the eastern side of the country, the spillovers are anticipated nationwide, including in Kinshasa, and other major cities, Lubumbashi, Kolwezi, flare-ups and protests cannot be ruled out. And of course, the most important thing here to mention is that in these major cities, the most, the targets could be the interests of Rwanda, Western countries, and other Eastern African countries like Uganda and Kenya, which you mentioned a little bit in the background. And nonetheless, we expect maybe additional loss if the situation, escalates further for Western nationals and other regional countries to inform their citizens, to evacuate from the DRC. The U.S. Embassy has already done that. So, Ramu, at this point, perhaps you can close off with what you're telling the clients or other multinational corporations, the DRC. What are we telling them in terms of advice?
Thank you, Sitati, for that very capsular overview. It was a long story that you managed to very coherently sum it up in a proper capsular format. Thank you for that. So yeah,
Thanks.
Coming on to the recommendations part. So multinational corporations operating in the DRC, especially in the southern regions of Lubumbashi and Kolwezi, should not assume immunity from the crisis. Even though these cities are not immediate conflict zones, they could see flare-ups of unrest, roadblocks, and even heightened military presence. Reinforce security at all facilities, transport hubs, and even worker accommodations to mitigate risk from possible criminal infiltration and even protests. Also, monitor key transport routes, particularly the Lubumbashi-Kinshasa corridor and the Zambia-DRC border crossings. This is because increased security checks and disruptions may delay shipments. Also implement contingency plans for workforce movements, ensuring that personnel have clear evacuation plans if the situation deteriorates further. Lastly, stay updated on intelligence reports and diplomatic developments that could influence government security measures and also indirectly influence business continuity. So to summarize, the M23 conflict is far from over and risks remain extremely high, not only in Eastern DRC, but also in major cities like Kinshasa, Lubumbashi, and Kolwezi. For a more specialized and comprehensive assessment of the evolving security situation in the country, feel free to contact APAC Assistance for tailored risk advisory and intelligence assessment reports. Thank you for joining us today. Stay safe.
Thanks.
And we will keep you updated as the situation develops.
Thank you.